Well, hi, friends. Welcome back to a Dakota Medical Foundation Kids Mental Health webinar. We're so glad that you could join us today live. If you are with us, add your comments at any time on whatever social platform you're following with us, and we'll be able to respond. If you're watching this recording, thanks for viewing and tuning in. And we still check our comments on social or email, so we'd love to hear from you. Today, we have a very special guest. It's a complete honor to be sitting with Officer Bloom. Officer Bloom, thanks for coming in the studio today.
Man, it's just as much as an honor to be here. I love what you guys do at DMF, Scott. I love your heart, Pat Trainer's heart, and the whole team. So it's just a great honor to be here today. Thank you.
Well, you have a real unique role. We've gotten the opportunity to see you rap. We've seen you on YouTube.
Yes.
You've done some really extraordinary things. And so we're going to unpack some of those things. But to begin, just for those that are not familiar with you and the department and work that you do, can you tell us about being a community trust officer with the Fargo Police Department?
Yeah. So I've been a police officer with Fargo PD for about 7.5 years. I'm originally from Modesto, California, and I moved here when I was 18 years old. And then when you meet your spouse, you kind of stay where you're at. That's what happened to me. I met my wife here. She was an NDSU grad. And now we have 3 beautiful children. We love this area. We love calling this area home for them, for school and things like that. And so I started with the police department in 2014. And in about 2015-ish, a federal grant came out called Trust Officer or Community Trust Officer. And I applied for it since our department took it on and was so blessed to receive it. Me and Officer Matt Niemeyer, who used to be my partner. And so for the past 5 years, our whole focus has been how do we engage the community as police officers? How do we build better trust? How do we build better relationships and really meet the needs of our city? That's really what it's turned into. Our city, like any other city in the United States, has so many needs and so many of our youth have needs. And so we're always working on the next step of how do we meet the needs of our kids.
Well, and from somebody just, as a community member, it seems like your role has done a really important job of building a relationship. So you're not just hearing from citizens on a survey or, a random calling in, that you've actually gotten to know a lot of people in a lot of different populations in our community.
Yeah, yeah. And honestly, that has just been because of the wonderful, I would say, acceptance of our community. The principals, I would give a big shout out to all the principals in the Fargo Public Schools have been so welcoming to let us come into their schools and mentor kids, work with kids, even do special visits when kids are having bad days. So if we know a kid is going through a crisis or just having a really hard week, so many of the counselors and principals have allowed us to come in and build those relationships with kids and work with them on some next steps. And even in Moorhead, the Juvenile Detention Center has been so welcoming, allowing us to come in and do programming with kids who are incarcerated. And so we've done a lot of programming, mentoring there. And the Dakota Boys and Girls Ranch, Luther Hall, it's just been an honor to go in and work with kids, have lunch with them, and learn about their life experiences.
Well, and already, you're showing us, what a depth and width of a network that the Fargo Police Department has within our community. What is, something you kind of wish that everybody knew about the Fargo Police Department and maybe your work in particular that they don't know?
Yeah, I would touch probably 2 sides of this question. First is I love our patrol officers. Our patrol officers are incredible. And I watch the work they do on a daily basis, on a nightly basis. I read about what they go through every night when I'm coming on to shift. And I just want to say, like, we have really good officers and really great leadership in this city. When I see the quality of work that officers do under incredibly stressful situations. And then also, I would say we have a whole department, kind of an engagement team of school resource officers, community trust officers led by Sergeant Christy Jacobson and Lieutenant Bill Offelt. And we really work every week on strategies and ways of how we can reach our city, help adults, help families, help kids, and really come up with strategies of improving trust in law enforcement, but also just the quality of life of people. Because I mean, that's really, I feel like if you're struggling with your quality of life or you're in poverty and you're trying to get out, to really trust anyone or love and respect anyone, you got to be in a healthier place. So we just want to help people get in healthy places and support them with whatever they're going through.
Well, and even that I think can be, maybe not the first impression that we think of when we think about law enforcement.
Hmm.
Maybe showing up reactive when something is happening, but this kind of sounds like you've got a whole proactive,
Yeah.
set of the force that's working diligently to create relationships and get ahead of things.
Yeah, totally, totally. Because from the patrol side, it's so reactive because, I encourage anyone just for a life experience to go on a ride along. Do a ride along and see that everything you're doing is you're getting so many small pieces of a very large puzzle on most of the calls you go on. And so, I mean, you get bad descriptions of suspects, the wrong clothing color, male instead of a female when you were told it was a female. I mean, the things that you run into on patrol, and then you're expected to really solve that problem. It's incredible what officers have to go through every day to just solve these kind of complex problems that people experience and kind of go through. And then for us, yeah, it's really coming around the tide of, okay, what's the cultures of the schools? What are we seeing in the middle schools? What are we seeing in the high schools? Vaping, bullying, mental health issues, emotional health issues. Okay, how can we partner with our counselors and principals and surround the network of leaders to just build better bridges and close gaps to resources and development, and that's what we're trying to do every day.
Well, and this is that's a this is Suicide Prevention Month,
Yeah.
and so I think that's a timely and good maybe question around is what would your role be from the Fargo Police Department around trying to help with suicide prevention, particularly among youth.
Yeah, that's a great question. Last year this conversation really became a hot topic for us when we saw two students pass away from suicide or die by suicide, and then now we're just seeking. Okay, if it happens to one kid, that's too many, and even if kids are thinking about it, that's too far. And we know that we can't prevent everything, but our whole focus is how can we encourage every kid possible to seek help, find resources if they need them. And so really that's been our goal the last, I would say, half of a year has been how can we partner with our public schools and really network with them, the counselors and the principals, on ways to educate prevention for students. Hey, here's what resources are in Fargo. Here's the great adult leaders that you can go to. And here's how you have hard conversations with your friends. Because we didn't want to just encourage kids who are struggling to get help. We wanted to educate kids on how to be leaders for their friends if they learn their friends need help. How do they take the next steps? It's kind of a complex issue for a young adult to go through. But that's something we've been tackling. And honestly, DMF helped us tackle that. So DMF really funded a vision we had for a video we just made called Break the Silence. And that project was the star of that project was prevention and education. And so it's organizations like yours, Scott, that back visions like that help us reach kids.
Well, and that was, I think a project that we should give some time to. So we've got educators and coaches and parents and, concerned adults that are trying to do their best to make sure that every kid in the Fargo Moorhead area has a bright future.
Yeah.
And so, tell us a little bit more about the Breaking the Silence project and what's involved with and how do people learn about it?
Sure. So the video can be viewed by anyone at any time on breakthesilencetogether.org. And it's a video that was made by Bartlett Idea Company. They came around us and really helped us with this vision. And honestly, what we wanted to do was create a tool that anyone could access at any time. And so no matter where you're located around the nation or what group you work with when it comes to youth, we wanted to make it accessible. There's kind of two parts, and the first part is real life stories of unfortunately victims, family members who have lost loved ones to suicide, and one who had a suicide attempt, but thankfully it didn't work, and he was there to share his testimony and story, and then we had a student panel with some educators and professionals from Sanford and Essentia, and a school, Swift, and I forgot what the acronym means, but you can look up the acronym for yourself. But she was awesome, Jessica Siders, and they kind of came together with these students and really had a one-on-one conversation about what happens if you go to the hospital if you're struggling, how to talk to your friends about mental health, and then really how to start the conversation with your parents, how to self-identify if you have are having feelings of not wanting to get out of bed in the morning. What do you do with those feelings? So it was really just trying to, I think, teach kids what they've already been thinking, but just teach them how to take action steps, because I just knew growing up myself, I didn't I didn't know of any content that was out there being taught, "Hey, you're a young adult, here's how you handle your mental health." So I just think we wanted to bring a resource that was needed. That was it.
But I think, this is a very well produced video. It's incredibly engaging. We'll post it along with this video so people can get access to it.
Yeah.
What would be your dream for this video, for the impact for it to have and the reach for it to make?
Yeah, I would love for it to reach every high school and middle school in the nation, to be honest, because the every parent, and I'm a parent myself, I think has the same dream that we want our kids to be successful and healthy. And so this video was made, I think, for students and for parents to help kids meet that goal for any parent. I don't think any of us really care what our kids end up doing as long as they're healthy, emotionally and mentally. They love themselves and they love other people. They're in a good place, and that's what I really want for my kids as they grow up. And I think that's why I want the reach to get so far, is mainly because we want to reach all kids in all places, no matter what they're going through, to help them feel healthy or get help if they don't feel healthy, to find resources and to let them know there's no stigma around their struggle, because everyone has the same struggles they have. And I think that's another big part of the piece, was to kind of take away that stigma that a lot of people face.
I think it's important to highlight, in addition to, all our viewers, watching and sharing this video, is just to go back a little bit on your strategy of how to help your friends when you see them. And I think that's real critical, maybe something that's been missing in our sort of social safety net of support of one another in our community, is that, if you're in a bad place, that's not the easiest time to be able to reach out. And so, as fellow friends and community members, to be able to look for that and connect with resources is a very powerful thing for all of us that we can all step into and take some responsibility in.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And I've kind of shared it with a couple people like this, in that don't be afraid to have awkward conversations if you think they're necessary. Because no one ever says on their friendship bucket list, I hope to ask my friend if they're feeling suicidal. I mean, that's a real thing. Like, no one ever hopes to ask that. But I think like, I was just thinking about this as you were talking. You are one of the most bubbly, kind people I know. Like, every time I see you, you're shining, man. You're glowing. And so, like, if I saw you show up to work one day in sweatpants and Crocs, I'd be like, "What's up with him today?" And if I saw a pattern of that, I know we're not like talking about like real time, but I'm just saying I might be like, man, I might need to ask him just how he's really doing. I might need to have a hard conversation with him, because it's out of character. I'm used to seeing this glow from this guy, this smile that radiates, man. It encourages people, and I haven't been seeing that, and now I'm seeing a different, almost pattern of behavior. And I think that's the thing. I think if we just recognize those patterns of, and the person who used to like light up the room doesn't even seem lit up themselves. So what happened to that spark or that light? And I think it's okay to have those awkward talks, because it just shows that you love people. I hope if I'm ever in that place, someone can have that awkward talk with me.
And I think it's like, if we look at some of the suicides amongst youth in our community, there does seem to be a concerning thread, which was more of that, where this was not expected.
Yeah.
These were kids that were outgoing, that they did have friends, they had a network, they came, they're economically and socially sound,
Hmm.
and all of the indicators were there. And so I think it's very prudent of us to be paying attention to key shifts in people's behavior.
Definitely. And even if you're a parent or a caregiver, I just want to encourage you, if it's once a month, or you could almost look at it from a business perspective, every quarter, you know, at dinner or over coffee, I'm going to take my kid out, my grandkid out to coffee or dinner or lunch. And I'm just going to ask them, how's your mental health? Have you been feeling depressed lately? How do you have anxiety lately? I just want to know. And if you want to talk, I'm here to listen. I love you. I want to know what you're going through. I think it's good to take those proactive steps more often than not. And I think that's very wise to do. And also, as adults, it's almost our responsibility, because, like you said just now, I think a lot of kids get trapped in the moment. Like, maybe there were some signs, maybe there weren't. Maybe there was some underlying depression or issues, but I think a lot of kids, in the moment, they get trapped and make a rash choice. I think that's our problem right now that we're facing. And if someone knows how to fix that, I mean, That would be a really amazing thing to learn. But I think that's our biggest issue right now is these impulsive, rash decisions in a moment. And so I think that proactive approach could hopefully intercede and intervene in something like that, hopefully, and prevent. That's my hope.
Yeah, and if you listen to the parents of somebody who's lost a son or daughter to suicide, it's just going back to replay what could have been done, or it does seem to resonate around this proactive measure
Yeah.
of a real check-in. And we get busy. Modern life is very fast paced, and we're
Mm.
all overcommitted and moving really quickly. And I think this is a wise thing for us to spend some time in this discussion, and those joining us to say, as a responsible person, to stop and create the space necessary to have a real check-in with those you love.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Because I mean, kids, I think in this generation, when I was in high school about 13 years ago, we had flip phones. That's what was coming on the scene. And if you were cool, you had a BlackBerry. And so I wasn't cool. I didn't even have a Razor phone, those real thin ones. I had like, I had the phone you could play Snake on. It was an old game that the thing went around, you try to eat it. But, now, and this is like the climate, I think, is kids aren't just competing with grades, they're competing with culture. And the culture of, I think a big one that is not really talked about a lot is body image. And that's male and female. I've seen it in both. It's followers, likes, and it's the way Snap, the private Snap stories, the group snaps that kids can get lost in and really tormented in by some peers, and the peers don't even know what they're doing. Kids are really going through a lot more that parents have no real way to be aware of unless they're in the kid's phone, to really see how a kid is even just comparing themselves to other kids constantly and judging themselves constantly. Um, for adults, I think it's we judge our neighbors by their boat, but for kids, I think it's by friends and followers. It's by body image, it's by popularity, it's by who they're dating and how they're dressed. I think a lot of these kids are going through that mentally, and that really does then associate with their mental health and well-being. So I think it's really important that we have these talks more often than not, because the phone is always in the hand of a teenager. So I think that's always the constant battle.
Yeah, visited with somebody. They studied generations and kind of
Mm,
the shifts that they have, and they had said that literally for somebody who's an adolescent, the phone is like an extension of the body. So when you take a phone away,
hmm,
it's almost violent. Like, it's a real violation of privacy because they're in it. So this is something that it's like, this is territory that, listening to you, it sounds best that what we should do is push this up sooner, and get ahead of it by talking about these things.
yeah,
And as adults, even, it's everyone is, you can fall into the trap of that negative tape playing over and over again. If you're thinking you're just lost in some sort of social media comparison battle and losing and starting to lose, slipping through reality, and you kind of get lost, you could see where that could end up in some really devastating outcomes.
yeah, yeah, totally. I mean, we're we're a generation of selfie takers, but the whole purpose of a selfie is to hope you get compliments. So I mean, that's what we live in. We live in a world where we take selfies, so then we can hopefully see comments, and then we can self-identify as valuable, worth it, pretty. I mean, I think that's the most interesting thing about teenagers is the amount of selfies you see on their feeds. Because as an adult, that's one thing I still to this day have never really. I've never taken a selfie. I never will take a selfie probably because I don't understand like the concept of like even how to respond to that. But that's when you look at like I don't know if you call them Gen Z or the under 25 or 25 and under, but it's like selfie is, I think, kind of saying, tell me my self worth. That's what I think it really is becoming is tell me I'm beautiful, tell me I'm smart, tell me you love how I look. It's really like trying to just find that validation through other people. And I think parents, especially, like I know it's my responsibility as a dad. I got to give my kids validation every day that's healthy, but also honest, not just feeding them a bunch of junk, but I think it's my responsibility to give that constant validation, feedback, and focus on their mental health and well being.
Well, yeah, and I think it's important to see the connection too about your work through the Fargo Police Department, about how incredibly important that is, both in suicide prevention, but also in you know juvenile delinquency and
Yeah,
at risk and the behaviors that really put a strain on our police forces. And I think you can very easily see that if we can spend more time creating environments that are nurturing
yeah.
kids and letting them know that they have self-worth regardless of what's happening on their Instagram account or Snapchat, and feeding that, you can really see how that would change the impact of negative behavior in the future.
Totally, man. I think as adults, one thing we can always be is positive critics for kids. They're always going to have critics. Kids with a cell phone, anyone's going to have a critic. If you have a news feed, you'll have a critic. But I think we can always be positive critics, positive leaders for our kids, from teachers to police officers to leaders of the nonprofit world. I mean, for real, I think we all can play that role in such a great way.
Well, and I think there's an invitation. I heard a theologian once say that it's not who you are, it's who you're becoming.
Mm,
And I think that's interesting if you apply that to watching behaviors and seeing if somebody kind of changes their pattern, or if
yeah,
we're changing our own pattern,
yeah.
to kind of notice that, because we're evolving, we're moving forward. Time doesn't stop; it continues to move. And so, I think the work that you're doing as a community trust officer, the entire Fargo Police Department, it's really remarkable what that has done to create a safe and healthy environment for our youth and beyond.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And honestly, a lot of it goes to our leadership at the Fargo Police Department, who continue to let us do what we do. So just a big shout out to them. And it's wonderful leaders, like DMF and other great groups in the community. Blue Cross Blue Shield has always been a great support for us. Shields, and just to name a few, I mean, Frito Lay to Cashwise to, I could just name them all. I mean, it's been incredible. The gifts, Walmart, First Lutheran Church. All right, I'll stop now. I could just go on and on, because I'm like, how did we make all this progress? Well, because we had so many people backing the vision and saying, we'll give to that, we'll support that, we'll help that. So really, it's like, man, without the help of your city, it's going to be really hard to make a real difference. So I'm very thankful for all the support we've received.
So you've got this trust work, you're building a network within schools and community entities and stakeholders around creating the conditions for youth to be safe and healthy and to thrive.
Yeah.
Then you got this breaking the silence video in that project. And again, we'll be posting the links so people can check that out and to share it. But then you also are working on something else called Badges of Unity. And could you share with our viewers what that is?
Yeah, Badges of Unity. It's our nonprofit set up through the Impact Foundation. And so the Badges of Unity Fund allows us to really do the programming that we do successfully. A great way to even just say that is Officer Dave Carlson, who I work with. He's a partner of mine on the CTO team. And he has some great mentorship programs that he runs. He does a kickboxing and boxing one, boxing only. And these really focus on self-disciplines, self-defense, and then mental health and wellness, because the coaches are really fabulous that run them. So Dave reaches out to our school resource officers a lot and says, hey, I have openings this fall, this spring, and let me know if you have any kids that are on the fence in school, struggling in school, and they need some good guidance and mentors. So these kids can come and do this program once or twice a week, and it's completely free, because then the Badges of Unity Fund pays for it. So we're doing, if you say, well, what are we funding? You're funding the progress of kids. You're funding the mental health of kids. And how can we develop better relationships with them? And how can we help them develop better relationships with mentors in the community? And so Badges of Unity allows us as a government entity to have this separate nonprofit to fund all of our great programs. It even helped us fund Break the Silence. And so to help fund that, to push that project, it really does a lot of great things, or allows us to do a lot of great things.
Well, and tell us a little bit about it, being, because those are remarkable programs that are available. Tell us about the impact that has over time on youth in our community.
Man, it's tremendous, because I'm now seeing kids at Fargo South High School that went through our summer programs that we used to run. We used to run a summer camp. So Officer Matt Niemeyer had this big vision to run a summer camp. It had to be funded. It was run through Fargo South High School. But then he would receive grants, and we take the kids to TNT Fitness, and they would do TNT gymnastics. And It morphed into swim lessons, and it morphed into all these other different things. And now I'm seeing those kids who I saw in fifth grade at Jefferson at Fargo South High School, and I'm going to their football games. And it's not like, oh, they just remember me, but it's like we have like this like almost brother relationship. Sometimes it's like father son. It feels weird because sometimes you have to be their authority. And I'm not that old. That's why I said it feels. I'm not young anymore, but I'm not that old either yet. But I'm like in that in between lane, and that's really been incredible to see the progress of kids who were little third graders and now they're freshmen playing football at South or at North. And I saw a kid at North High the other day that's going to play basketball this year, and now he was in our summer camp originally 5 years ago. And now I'm seeing his little brother at Jefferson Elementary School. So the relationships are incredible, man. I want to give one plug too, just real quick. We had an issue in our community of new American youth and or adults that we were seeing a rise in drownings. So most of the drownings that were happening were people who would kind of be classified as new American coming to this country within the last 5 or 10 years as refugee status or something of that nature. And so Vince Kempf and Dave Carlson had a great vision to do survival swim lessons. And so the last couple of years, they have taken our bus. We have a CTO bus, and they have picked up a large group of kids different times of the year and driven them to either Concordia, and they might have to correct me. I think it was also the it was Foss. I think Foss Swim School, and have done full sessions of survival swim lessons for like 6 weeks for large groups of new American kids. So if they ever find themselves in the Red River, which unfortunately we've seen drownings, or some other larger pools, they can learn how to swim to the side safely. So I had to give that a plug because I'm like, that literally saves lives, and we do that through the Badges of Unity Fund. So
Well, I think that's a great example to show the tangible work that's being done through Badges of Unity and the police department
yeah,
in general, to not just, I mean, to respond, but also to be incredibly proactive to create a safe and welcoming environment.
yeah, and your staff is so great to work with because none of us have accounting majors, so we all had to learn how to do invoices and send invoices and do all that jazz. So big plug to DMF and the Impact Foundation. So
Well, it's an honor to be able to assist you in your work, and that's what we do here.
thanks, man.
Is to support great people like you and the efforts of the Fargo Police Department. If you could sum up, you spend a lot of time with youth, a lot of youth that could be certainly categorized as at-risk youth.
Mhm.
But if you kind of take a look over the last few years, what are some of the trends you think parents maybe don't know, or that you think might surprise them if they knew what was going on in the minds of at-risk youth in our community?
Man, it's a great question. A lot of people have asked me, and this is just a lead up to that answer. How do you judge your success? That's what people have asked me a lot, because a lot of people love data and statistics. And I say, well, it's so interesting in our line of work because so many kids come from different home environments that literally some of the kids I've even mentioned from elementary to high school, oh my gosh, I mean, it has been, oh, they got arrested, they got sent away, now they're back. Or some of the kids, it's like they shoplifted one time, we worked it out, and now they're doing pretty good. I mean, it's like up and down, and some of them, they've been amazing the entire time. And so I would say with with that answer, it's like a lot of kids come from different places, but I would say that kids are going to learn. Um, Kids are going to learn what you're afraid to teach them sooner than you think. So just I would teach them sooner. I would teach them at younger ages about the world now. That's what I would say, I guess. Like what's going through the mind of young kids is kids are going to expose your kids to their world because of cell phones, because of Snapchat, because of technology way faster than they would ever been exposed 10 years ago to that world, to anything. So trying to keep your kids quote unquote safe, or one day we'll have that talk, or one day I'll educate you about drinking or smoking, or one day I'll educate you on these hard topics. Man, educate your kids as quick as possible, because the moment they start befriending kids who have cell phones, your kids will will learn it all. So because a lot of kids don't have the parental guidance and protection that some parents should be enforcing. So I just want to encourage parents with that. educate your kids and help them grow up as fast as they can when it comes to things of the world.
Well, I think that's a real gift that you've given us throughout just this interview, is to get proactive about these things, of being thoughtful about your relationships and the topics that you're covering.
Yeah.
Because you're right, it's a different, I mean, you can type anything into a search box. So
Yeah.
any curiosity or any question, you're going to have it. And I think if a lot of us, even that are a little bit older in this in between age, even the way that we were taught things was usually through somebody, and not always maybe the best somebody to tell us about the questions that come to you in the world.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I'm seeing kids that I would say as young as 5th grade making TikToks at parks and sharing videos with all these kids around. So it's like kids are just exposed to content constantly. And that's the thing. It's like we can't really hide from that. That's just the world we live in. They are literally exposed to content all the time, even if they didn't want to be. That's the thing. It's like even if they didn't want to be. I remember I used to almost have to try to be bad because you had to go find it. And it's like, but the content on our phones now, it's like, man, you don't really have to find much. It just come to you. So that's just the truth.
Well, so we've covered the Fargo Police Department, and especially the Community Trust Department, about breaking the silence in that project. Covered all sorts of roles that the police department has played, and badges of unity, and how that's used to go deeper and further with programming that is both responsive but also incredibly proactive.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with our viewers today that we haven't covered yet before we close?
Just in all honesty, the Fargo Police Department does a great job in this city. So support your officers as much as you can, because they have a really hard job. And right now, Fargo's only getting busier. So I just want to say that, man, support the police. They do a wonderful job in this city, man. They work so hard, tirelessly. And then also just thank you to our city for all the support, because Fargo was wonderful. I would not do this position as long as I've done it if it wasn't for all the love and support we get. So just a big shout out to one of the greatest communities literally in the world, Fargo, man. Shout out.
Well, and one final question for you, Officer Bloom, is what are some things that we can do to get involved and support these efforts?
Yeah, totally. I mean, we love when people donate to our programming or just to the Badges of Unity Fund. I'll say that with just total openness, because none of us take a salary from that. So it feels really good to say all that money goes to youth programming. All that money goes to bringing in an entertainer into the juvenile detention center to rap and speak to our kids at detention, which we just did a couple months ago. And one young male in particular who I just know was having some really deep issues. And I saw him crying. And it's like, you don't see a lot of kids in those environments crying. And he just broke down and started crying. And it was incredible because the speaker impacted him that much. So when you give, it allows us to give back to kids. So the Badges of Unity Fund is a great way to support that vision and that mission.
We'll be sure to share a link to the Badges of Unity Fund, and want to thank you so much for what the Fargo Police Department has done, for breaking the silence, that project for Badges of Unity. It's because of that work we have a high quality of life here.
Yeah.
And we owe a lot to that, and also for being a role model and showing us the way of what it looks like to put positivity into our community.
Thanks, man. I say the same to you. Say the same to you. I appreciate you having me today.
Well, it's been an honor. We appreciate all of you joining us. We look forward to seeing you on our next Kids Mental Health webinar.